orderly exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Let's begin our business of shaping policy for today by looking at the face-off between the federal government and the labor movement as regards minimum wage. The face-off assumed another dimension yesterday as the labor movement declared an indefinite strike, demanding a sum of 494,000 naira as minimum wage in Nigeria. The question is, how sustainable is this, and will the federal government be able to afford this? Let's see what the conversation will look like in coming days or in coming hours as the federal government is set to meet with the labor movement. But today, we look at the thrust of this conversation, why this controversy, and what should be done to avert the showdown between the federal government and the labor movement. I'm not alone. Blessing is here this morning. Blessing, glad you have joined us.
Yes, I'm not on strike, so I'm with you. Good morning, Femi.
Yeah, good to see you.
Same here.
Yeah, and we have Sam Orovwuje here with us, who is an in-house analyst. Always a pleasure having you around to intervene on issues like this.
Good morning, Femi. My pleasure to be here. And good morning, Blessing.
Good morning.
Thank you.
It's good to see that you're smiling in spite of NLC and some other unions being on strike. And you know that many businesses and a lot of things are shut down just yesterday till now. So it's been like a difficult time. How are you able to manage a smile?
I think out of every difficulties, people will come out better. So it's just one of those challenging moments as a country. And I'm sure by the end of today, we'll be able to get a clear picture of the negotiation, the ongoing negotiation between Labour and the federal government. I think, hopefully, things will turn out better, in my view.
All right, let's situate the conversation by looking at the two sides to the issue. You have the labor movement, here on the other hand, you have the federal government, and in between you have Nigerians. It is often said when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. Here you have Nigerians or Nigerian workers. But let's start with the labor movement, who declared an indefinite strike yesterday. They started yesterday to show a sign of seriousness as a way of also sending a signal to the federal government that it's not going to be business as usual. Now, the demand from the labor movement is the sum of 494,000 naira. The argument on the part of the government is it's not sustainable. That means you're asking for over 1,500% increase over the present minimum wage, and according to the minister, a sum of 9.5 trillion naira for the federal government. What's your take on this? Let's start from the labor movement, the strike action, which paralyzed economic activities.
Let me start this way.
Yeah.
I'm one of those who don't really support strike action as an option. But for this one, I think I support Labour in some respect because this negotiation has been ongoing since last year. And I think the federal government will have been responsible enough to see how that negotiation will have been resolved since the creation of that committee to look at the wage increment that Labour was asking for. But on the other hand, I think I differ strongly with Labour asking for about 1,000% increase from the current minimum wage of 30,000 to 460-something thousand.
94 is that?
Yeah, 94. I think that is not sustainable, particularly from the perspective of the organized private sector that is part of this arrangement. But I think the government should find a way to come to a middle ground with Labour. And I think what the government has offered at 60,000, in my personal view, look ridiculously low. And I hope if you look at a few other countries within Africa, if we take Rwanda, for example, the minimum threshold is about 120,000 Rwanda franc which by and large revolve around about $100. Then if you take it relate you to Angola, which has almost had the same kind of a monoproduct economy from oil and gas, they take about 100,000 of their local money. So when you look at that and convert it to dollar, that looks like about $120. So in my view, I think without preempting the decision or the ongoing negotiation, I think the government should shift a bit to a place where a minimum threshold of $100 should be used as a benchmark to calculate it. But this is going to be a major challenge, particularly for the private sector, whose business environment has been challenged over the years in terms of cost of doing business. So this is going to bring another problem in terms of those that will get out of the workplace and the rate of unemployment will increase. So the appeal here today is that the government should shift its ground and labor should shift its ground as well, so that we can have a win-win situation that will be beneficial equally to the private sector.
Talking about both parties here shifting ground, before we look at what has happened to the grass on the ground on which these two elephants have been fighting. Now look at where Labour started from, 615,000, and then the government started with about 54,000, and then Labour came down to 494,000. The government is still around 60,000 naira. Does it seem like two extremes, like the negotiating parties are not being realistic enough? And that's what's dragging this whole talk.
I think there are principles in negotiation. That's what you call splitting the difference. They started at 600 and something, and the government offered 50-something thousand. They move up to 60,000. And Labour is asking for 400 and something. So what I think, looking at all the parameters, they should come to a middle ground where both parties will look at the advantage and disadvantage of the increment and look at a wider implication beyond the government and the organized private sector, and look at the negative impact it's likely to have, first and foremost, on how most companies will run size. And at the end of the day, the number of people that are unemployed will increase, because most private sector will not be in a position to pay those kind of money that Labour is asking for. That's about 300 and something, about $326 or $329 monthly as a minimum threshold in terms of the wage payment. But the government, on the other hand, beyond its current position, if they can provide some other social incentive beyond non-monetary compensation, that might help Labour to shift their ground. So improvement of social transportation, this housing scheme, social housing scheme, once people have access to mortgage and all that, and they're able to get some housing scheme, whether 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom apartment from that government housing scheme, then that may help people to come to a ground that is mutually beneficial between the government and Labour.
Let's talk about the grass on the ground in which this fight is happening. Schools affected by the strike, power supply has been shut down. A lot of businesses have also closed because of the strike, particularly hospitals, government hospitals that have gone on strike. The implications of the strike, at the end of the day, would it be worth it?
No, I think from organized labor perspective, the strike is a means of negotiation. So once you're able to cannibalize the process, then the government might be in a way to listen to labor. So in that regard, based on industrial relation principles, where strike is one of the principles that labor use to negotiate, in that regard, if it's say the grass really suffer, I think it's neither here nor there, because at the end of the day, it's going to be beneficial to everybody. But I think for hospital is an essential service service provider. And I'm sure in spite of that issue, when there are emergencies, I think doctors and nurses will be able to take care of people. But I'm sure that by the end of today, both parties will see reason why the strikes or the negotiation should quickly be concluded in the interest of the greater majority of Nigeria. So for me, the small problem in terms of the problem with electricity transportation is just for a little while, and I'm sure by end of today it will be clearer the position of government and the position of labor, and I'm hopeful that the strike will be called off.
All right, still on the part of the labor movement, the new minimum wage stipulates that the minimum wage should be reviewed every 5 years. But you have a situation where if you follow the accident of the face-off between the federal government and the labor movement, it appears the only language the Nigerian government understands is industrial action. So if the act stipulates that this has to be reviewed every 5 years, and you have a situation where the last one expired in April 2024, should the federal government have waited for a time like this, and now that the labor had no option but to declare an industrial action?
I think in my personal view, the way government officials handle labor matter and industrial relation matter is not desirable. We have to put that in the public space. What you can do as somebody who manages industrial relations, you anticipate. And there's a constitutional provision that every 5 years you need to review the minimum wage. And universally, there's a concept of COLA, that's cost of living adjustment, that is brought about as a result of inflation, where you need to review salaries in line with the current reality. And I think the government needed not to wait for this time for labor to call off a strike to resolve this issue. So the advice here is that those people in government, because they have state power, should not be grandstanding when it comes to negotiation, particularly in terms of the way they handle labor relation or industrial relation, particularly with organized labor in the country. So, and I think going forward, we must close the gap, particularly the Ministry of Labor and Productivity must put some early warning systems in place where they can see the likelihood of labor coming to strike about negotiation that had failed. You will see the federal government with the academic staff union that have not even resolved their own issues based on their negotiations. So government must negotiate in a way that they can respect some of the negotiation that they have with labor or any other union for that matter. This idea of government officials not respecting bargaining between labor and the government, I think is not desirable for national productivity and development. So both sides must find a way to resolve issues beyond strike action.
I have two questions. One of them is government's, the reason why government sometimes does not respect agreements made with labor. Has it anything to do with negotiating under duress, like a situation like this? And then secondly, the economic implication of the strike. Airports, activities at airports have been halted almost completely in major airports across Nigeria. Schools have been closed. And then a lot of businesses are not able to continue, even those that may not want to be part of the strike are not able to continue because power supply has been shut down as well. The economic implications. Whenever Nigeria, there's a national strike like this, even for a few days, it costs Nigeria a lot. Recovering from that, as against giving labor what they're asking and not go through the pains. What's your take?
I think I just spoke to that a little while ago. Those in government and those in labor must behave responsibly in terms of respecting their own side of the collective bargaining they do with government from time to time. But when you balance it on a scale, I think the government, in my view, has not really been responsible in terms of respecting negotiation that they go into with labor. So whether people go into a negotiation under duress, I think that is not true. When you come into a negotiation, you bargain, shifting position based on the parameters that you bring to bear. And when you go into a negotiation where you have a positional negotiation scale that, okay, I'm a government, therefore nobody can push me beyond the level of which I think I can do things. I think that's wrong. Labor too, on the other hand, must not always use strike action as a means of negotiation. So the point I'm making here is that a win-win situation based on responsibility of both parties and respecting whatever commitment that you have made. But one of the issues that I've always had is that people don't respect commitments, both on the side of government and on the side of labor. Even in the organized private sector, sometimes employees don't even respect those commitments, but they always push the employer in a way that as if the employer is more guilty than even the employee that does not have that commitment. So if you look at the impact the strike will have had on national productivity between yesterday and today, is so alarming that we have made a lot of losses, which will negatively impact even on business. A bad hit is the informal sector that live day by day based on what they do. And that would make some families to be in a difficult position between yesterday and today. So, and those who are at the negotiation table must look at these other elements who are not directly involved in this negotiation and take cognizance of other people that suffer when decisions are not properly made and people don't respect what they have negotiated. So I think hopefully by end of today, if they can come to a compromise, I'm sure that both parties should respect the compromises made. And even state governments that are not even be able to pay the 30,000 minimum wage should be able to pay. And the law is there, and I don't know how labor can use the instrumentality of law to drive the government to respect what they have negotiated to pay.
Now, let's look at the outcome of the meeting held yesterday. Certain decisions were taken, about 4 of them. We're going to look at them and what will be the next phase. The first on the list was that I would like to, according to a statement released in this regard, the President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces is committed to a national minimum wage that is higher than 60,000 naira. That's the first part of the decision. And I would love you to react to this. The president is saying he's committed to a national minimum wage that is above 60,000 naira. The president is not being specific here. Don't you think this sounds like a political statement? What do you make of this statement? Then on the other hand, what would you advise the federal government to do if the federal government is saying if they accede to the demand of labor, which is like agreeing to 494,000 naira, this will amount to about 9.5 trillion as wage bill for the federal government. That's almost half of the budget for the national budget for the year. So what would you expect on the other?
Okay, for the first one, the president making that statement is an appropriate statement to make. It's not political. There's a negotiation ongoing, so it will be prejudicial on the part of the president to make a public statement about a specific figure. So the president is right in that direction. In labor matter, there's an ongoing negotiation. So you cannot put something in the public space where there are officials on the negotiation table. Government may have brought their own position to bear currently on the negotiation. So it would be out of place for the president to make a definitive statement in the public space. So that statement is in the right direction. But on the other hand, if the government thinks that it's not able to pay based on the current minimum threshold that is open to government, there are options in terms of reform that the government need to make through the process of right-sizing the public sector to demand more productivity. And that, again, will help the public sector to be able to pay a living wage, in quotes. The point I'm trying to make here is that the civil service is bogus in nature, and the productivity there is already in the public space, where you have a lot of idle hands populating various departments and agencies of government that are not doing certain things. So the government itself must look inward to see how you address its labor force in line with the current reality in terms of what they have committed to pay. Two, because of the political issues involved in public service recruitment, the government, on the other hand, must find a way to reskill the public sector in a way that those you want to take out, you're able to pay their severance benefits and retool them for other purposes and see how they can be useful to themselves. So we can have a win-win situation where, because you have a large size of labor force, and this will erode on your revenue, then look inward. There was an alignment of the various ministry and department of government that has not come into fruition. So these are some of the things the government must look into so that it can control its wage bill. And I think most time the organized private sector don't have these issues because they look at their numbers, they look at the bottom line, and they look at their revenue profile to make decisions on salaries and wages. And I think the government should be able to do that as well.
All right, let's wait and hear what will be the outcome of negotiations today between Labour and the federal government and see if the indefinite strike will be called off, because just yesterday and today some pains already have been felt, and we do hope that this pain is not for too long. But however, I think it's quite commendable the way they've been able to organize a strike, in the sense that it's not been violent, it's been peaceful. People are still being able to go about their daily activities. Looking at the way it is around the central business district in Lagos, Lagos Island, people going about the business, and in most parts of the city. We want to ask also that it should be peaceful all the way, while we also plead on government and Labour to shift grounds, like Sam Urudi has also advised that they shift grounds so that...
That's the basis of negotiation. You must make compromises here and there to be able to strike a balance.
Okay.
If you have a one-sided mentality, then you don't win. It should be a win-win situation for both parties.
Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.